Let's go live to our panel, our regular Wednesday panel with David Gazzard and Ben Oquist. David Gazzard, first to you from DPG Advisory. Tell me, what do you make of this controversy for Mr Porter? Apparently Phil Coorey reports this afternoon he's spoken to the Prime Minister today and is considering his options.
Well, he'll have to tidy it up, I think. The thing that strikes me is that you've got an outpouring of support from the community for a guy they think's been treated unjustly. Now, there's no doubt, in keeping with other principles that go to disclosure around other entities, political parties, associated entities with politics, there needs to be transparent disclosure, and this is probably going to meet that test, I would imagine. But the stunning thing for me is that there's just so many people that have been prepared to contribute their own funds because they want to see the guy get a fair deal in court after he was the subject of allegations in Four Corners that ended up in court where there was a settlement. So I think it's extraordinary that there's been the backing of the public, who really just want to, I would say, are saying we want to contribute to make sure ethical journalism is held as part of one of the key tenets in our democracy.
The Greens have said today, Ben Oquist, that they would move a motion of no confidence in Christian Porter when Parliament returns. So it wasn't something that was going to simply evaporate as an issue for the Morrison government.
No, this is one of those things that gives politics a terribly bad name. I spend a lot of my time actually defending politicians and politics. Gets a bad rap, and politicians get a bad rap over their travel and their entitlements and what they do. And actually, we need to cut them a bit more slack. But this is a stinker, and it's embarrassing. It looks rotten. Here's a prediction. There's no way that the Prime Minister will face a press conference before this is cleared up. I think David exaggerates the support for Christian Porter in the community. But the point is, we don't know how many donors are in this trust. We don't know whether they come from overseas. We don't know if it is a potential conflict of interest. We don't know if the money where it comes from. Criminals would come from everywhere. I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous. The Electoral Commission is now saying that they can't look into it because it's not in an election period. I mean, either he is breaking the rules or the rules are a farce. It's going to supercharge the case for a federal anti-corruption watchdog, which Christian Porter himself announced would happen 1,000 days ago. What a joke that is too. I mean, come on, 1,000 days, still no legislation in the Parliament. What the government has proposed doesn't even have any teeth. This is terrible, and it's going to have to be cleared up soon.
We've got some politics separate to COVID as well on another matter. It's unusual that we do two things not on COVID-19, but this is in relation to Anthony Albanese's effort to try and boost diversity in his ranks. My colleague Andrew Clennell has uncovered a couple of names in the seats of Banks and Reid, two seats that Labor would fancy their chances. But obviously following the Christina Keneally to Fowler story, David.
Yeah, look, this one's really interesting because it reminds me of something that Julia Gillard did 7 months before the September 2013 election. So we're almost the anniversary of that election, when she essentially locked in the next 7 months as part of an election campaign. And that appears to me to be what Anthony Albanese has done today with the Labor Party. They're effectively declaring that we're now, or he's effectively declaring that it's now an election period and they're on election footing. So he's locking himself in and the party is locking itself in for whatever occurs over the next few months. It could be as soon as December. It could be as late as next May. So I think we've effectively now formally entered the race. Now, I think, Labor has got monumental schisms within its party, as evidenced by Joel Fitzgibbon leaving this week because he feels like the party doesn't stand up for the values that he represents. And it goes to this sort of, the Adam Bant this week saying that members of the Greens should be called the shadow ministry, where you've got this tension that's now going around installing candidates in various seats, but ultimately the tectonic plates of the left and the right fighting for supremacy inside the party. So it is going to be a very, very interesting campaign, which is effectively being kicked off today by the leader.
Ben, it is messy. There's no doubt about that.
Joel Fitz, just one thing. Joel Fitz said he left because the party was now more like he wanted. He didn't leave in despair. He left, he said, because his job had been done. Notwithstanding that, it's been messy, but I think Albanese's done well to take control of it here. I think these pre-selection stoushes and jockeying happen inside all political parties. Maybe Labor's are more on public display from time to time, but I think they're getting their house in order, actually well ahead of when election is likely to be, regardless of when that is. He's clearing the decks, he's sorting it out. As Clennell said earlier, he's got on the front foot about it, and despite the messiness, I think it'll be fish and chip paper pretty soon, and certainly well before the election.
David, some good news on the vaccine front, 80% first dose and climbing. A fantastic result in New South Wales, the state under enormous pressure. But the other good news is it looks like that curve is flattening, finally. Yeah,
well, this is consistent with everything that the Doherty Institute has been talking about, and it is good news because, all of us are looking to get out of this thing. I think it's a salutary reminder as well to other states to push as quickly as possible for vaccinations, because I think what we don't really want to see is a patchwork quilt of various timeframes for opening. It certainly looks very much like New South Wales may lead the way there. Victoria following. It's despairing to be in the ACT and see the lockdown extended unilaterally for another month when vaccination rates are getting high. And I suppose it exposes this debate that is going to start in the community and has already commenced, I suppose, with are we for flattening the curve or are we for full elimination? And to see things starting to open up in various jurisdictions, I suppose indicates that there's leadership coming to opening up and getting back to normal once the hurdles that have been backed by scientific research are reached.
And the other thing I think, just further to that, is that leaders have to be willing to answer questions, Ben Oquist, not have a hissy fit that people ask them questions like we saw today. Tom Connell, my colleague, asked some straight questions, sensible, thoughtful questions, and the behaviour of the Chief Minister was petulant in response.
I think Andrew Barr's done a good job in Canberra. I think Canberrans are rightly proud of the job he's done, actually.
You're allowed to ask questions, Ben, aren't you?
He's there turning up at press conferences every day, unlike some other leaders, and I think he's continuing to do a good job. We're going to need more than vaccines, and the Doherty modelling is very clear that you need to get to 70 or 80%. Even if you take out kids, we're only at 47%, and, as your strap's just been showing. We're going to need more than vaccines. The Doherty modelling's clear, the Burnett analysis is clear. Our leaders, of course, are under pressure to open the borders, and Andrew Barr has been accused there by David Gattarzot of making this decision unilaterally. I don't know how else the decision was going to be made, but I think it's got wide-scale support for trying to get as many people vaccinated first. You want to get well below 80%. We want to get as many children vaccinated first. We haven't even got into the debate about long COVID and how many kids are going to get it if we open up before as many of them as vaccinated as possible. Of course, our leaders need to be accountable, but let's get the other things going as well.
We're almost out of time. David, just finally to you on that before we wrap up.
Well, I'd say it is certainly not unilaterally. There's been an agreement made between all of the leaders to follow the roadmap at 70 and 80%, and Andrew Barr was part of that. That was part of a cabinet process with all the other leaders across the country. So you can't go into a national cabinet meeting and sign up and then pull out later on because...
No, that's not what the National Cabinet Plan said, though. David. That's not what it said. It said there'll be
It certainly did.
lockdowns and health measures.
They agreed to a 4-stage process to get out of lockdown that would commence at 70% and move into high gear at 80%. And you can't sign up when it's convenient to do so at National Cabinet
and states
then bail
will have
out
their...
when you've got a number of cases a day. You're going to have to confront this going forward. There are going to be cases across all of our communities.
We are going to have to save as many lives as we can.
Absolutely. And as long as the hospital situation can cope with it, and ICU can, you've got to get out of it.
David, Ben Oquist from the Australia Institute, David Gazzard, DPG Advisory. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
The bottom 20% get nothing. They're really unfair tax cuts.
People want to see much stronger action from the government when it comes to climate change.
It's no coincidence that we have a wages crisis in Australia.
Transitioning to net zero emissions, it doesn't seem like there's much room for gas.